The proposed tax reform bill of President Tinubu's government is stirring a robust debate across ethnic and political lines, with leaders across divides firing salvos, especially from 19 northern state governors, with strong for and against sentiments. With the governors finally dropping their gauntlets and okaying the proposed tax reform bill, what's the implication of the proposed VAT sharing formula and the chances of the National Assembly adopting the governor's recommendations? I'm delighted to have Dr. Adesina, Fagbenro-Byron, an international development expert and a lawyer. He joins us now on Arise Prime Time. Glad to have you.
Good evening. Thank you.
Adesina.
Thank
All
you
right.
for having me.
Victory at last, the presidency would say, but at what cost?
Well, at the cost of rigorous discussions, at the cost of people actually venting both sentiment and objective thoughts, at the cost of time wasted. Well, I wouldn't say it's wasted anymore because some compromise has been reached. I've always felt the Governors Forum is a very potent platform to arrive at national consensus. No matter how turbulent or no matter how controversial certain issues are, the Governors Forum has always provided a platform at very high level for people to reason, separate sentiments from objective values.
Yeah, so, you talked about time.
Yes.
So let me take you up on that.
Yeah.
Is it possible, Fagbenro, that this could have been done in a smoother, less time-wasting way than this, by consultation? Somebody said, don't throw the cart before the horse. What do you think?
I agree with that. I believe a lot of things that should have been done in terms of consultation were left until the very last moment when the bill was presented and people actually looked at the bill. I believe there was a bit of presumption on the part of those that the bill would have affected. If somebody's going to write a bill or somebody's going to write a law that is going to affect me, at the slightest opportunity I gather, I will do some detailed forensic about that law. I think that the committee provided some opportunity for consultation. I'm not sure how robust the communication. You see, because when you want to reform, communication is a very critical aspect of reforms. You know, nobody likes to leave their comfort zones. So you communicate, and you also communicate using the right languages. For example, one of the reasons or one of the causes, I believe, for this delay was the overemphasis that it was a tax, a set of tax laws rather than revenue bills. So if, for example, government handlers played up that revenue, I mean, there are 2 tax bills, 2 revenue bills. But there is a way you can couch this thing, the messaging. You know, Yorubas will say, there is a manner in which you will present it. So it looked as if, oh, this is another tax, this is another means of, and people who want to run away with either mischief or not being patient enough or being political, more political than they should be after elections, then people throw in all sorts of things into the works. Okay. And I think this is what, but for example, I believe it's lesson for the federal government too.
That's why I brought out that issue.
If they had made the case to the Governors Forum much earlier as a collective.
Which is a strong body.
Which is a strong body, they would have put out the details there. A lot of the controversy wouldn't have come out.
I think that's apparent because what you said now was actually what led me to ask that question. I mean, you can't but talk about this because of tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you learn your lessons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And know how to go about
absolutely.
it. The fact of messaging, the language, you couch it.
Yes.
I mean, somebody said you can tell somebody you're stupid with your face, frown. And you can tell somebody you're stupid and smiling.
And smile.
Well, you know you're stupid.
Yes, you could tell somebody to go to hell and,
And
he
the person-
enjoys the journey.
And he enjoys the journey. Yeah,
You
that's a good way to put it.
So-
Now, someone says the degree of debate
Yes.
all this has generated
Yes.
attests to Nigerians' democratic resilience. Do you subscribe to this paradigm?
Well, people will debate whether it's a democratic atmosphere or not. It's the question of what are the consequences of your debate, right? Under a non-democratic or a non-free society, you can debate all you want. You may end up in jail at the end of the day. In this context, I believe what the debate has allowed a freedom of expression. It's robust enough. Fortunately, the gentleman in charge of the reforms, the chairman IFRS, that team, I believe they approached it with a fair sense of humility. I mean, in as much as a lot of people felt that, oh, this is another imposition of Tinubu, I believe the conduct of the gentlemen, I mean, they were on different television stations, including Arise here, to start to explain and try to explain. As we said, it would have been better if some of the explanations were a bit more robust and a bit more decentralized. A lot of people think when you make announcements in Abuja, it gets cascaded to the states. Some of the states can be very, very remote and be very busy doing other things or being, distracted by other things. So except you take this thing to them, and like we've said, the Governors Forum is a platform. Let me just mention that, it's not new. The controversy, the key controversy, there were so many things about the laws that were not controversial, but the VAT distribution was very, very controversial. The time lapse in the issue of distribution of development levies when it comes to all this third fund and stuff was another controversial issue.
We're going to get to that.
But what I'm saying is that when the issue started, people just picked on the VAT thing. Now, before 1966, we didn't have VAT, as it were. It was sales tax. And for sales tax, it was distributed 40% federal government, 30% to the north, 20% to the west, and 10% to the southeast. And it was based largely on derivation.
Which is
the
sticking
same
point.
principle, right? But you see, the way and manner you fight a battle 60 years ago, and the justification for your argument 60 years old cannot be the same.
Can be.
50 years after.
Yeah.
So this is why. But what we're saying is I think the governors should be commended. I think those who have changed, or at least who lent themselves to being convinced, right, about the substance, right, and the merit of these new reforms, I think they should be credited. It's not easy for people to, and I think as a collective, the Governors Forum should be credited, really.
All right, so let's talk about, well, you've raised some issues, but let's take them one by one. The governors have accepted with a proviso a new sharing formula for the VAT.
Yes.
And then no decrease in CIT, corporate income
no more increases.
tax.
Yes.
What the question now, like I read out there earlier, you think this will say through what's your sense of it, of drafting or creating a new VAT sharing formula, and then no decrease in CIT?
Well, I think this new VAT formula is trying to create a balance.
They're talking about 50%
Yes.
equality, 30% derivation, and 20% population.
Now, what the VAT is trying to create a dynamic. It's trying to create a balance between equitable, I'm not saying equal, equitable distribution of resources, and then providing incentives to production. When we say Nigeria must move to from consumption to production. How do you incentivize production? The only way you incentivize production is to make sure that for all my efforts of production, I get something in return. There must be an extra mark. If all of us shared it, if it was just everybody
baseline,
equal baseline, what is the incentive for me to work extra harder? What's the incentive for me to continue to look at diverse ways of boosting my own economy? I would just sit down and say, okay, let it come. And so this is what the balance, and I think what has been arrived at, the original one was that 60% should go to derivation. 20%, 20 to equality, and 20 to population. So I think that in the immediate, yes, it could have been seen as controversial because people need to prepare. There has to be a transition. In any reform, there has to be a transition period for people to, number one, understand how it works, to adjust to how it works, and to ensure that when it works successfully. There is also a gestation period for the reform itself. It is not every reform you see today that you will find the results tomorrow. You cannot impregnate a woman today and expect she gives birth tomorrow. 9 months.
In the next 1 month.
9 months must happen.
It must.
Right.
Otherwise, then there's problem.
At the worst or the best, whichever way you want to see it, it will be premature, but 7 months will reach there.
Yeah.
Anything before that is danger, will not happen. So
it may not bring any forth.
Thank you very much. So a reform will come in. That reform is not expected to. My concern is for people who expect to see the fruits of reforms tomorrow. Announce the reform today and you see the fruits. Yes, they may have effect on markets, which are, it's possible to make an announcement today and the market goes down or goes up, something increases, but that's not a long term. That's a blip or a dip. But the long term effect, that is what we call impact. The real impact of a reform or a policy will take a number of months. And who says policies cannot be reviewed? I think one of the issues we have in Nigeria is that we don't periodically, as a matter of determination, review our policies. You can't have a policy and the policy is 4 years.
It sounds to me like you're even almost discussing both the subsidy removal and the floating of the naira. Because when you talk about gestation, and when you talk about impact, what would want that? I mean, that's not what we're discussing. Did the government consider it? The impact on people and that, and the fact of review of policy. If you put out a policy there, and the impact is seeming to drown people, can't you review it?
Okay, there's what we call, there's a long short-term impact, right? There's a mid-term impact. The long-term impact is what we are driving at. That's the objective. If you come to me and say you have malaria and I give you an injection, that injection, if it has got the right drugs in it, it will cure you. But the immediate impact of the pain of the injection, how would you find it?
Very painful.
When a woman goes to the hospital and gives birth, in the process of laboring, how painful will that be?
Very.
But are you going to frustrate it? There are things, I'll tell you something. I ran for president in 2019.
Yeah, cool, 2019.
I studied, there is no one who will want to be president, who will want to seriously address Nigeria's issues that will not provide some reforms that will be painful in the immediate. We have had 60, how many years? 40 in the past immediate years of reckless living. We lived a lie. Nigeria has lived a lie. And so when you have reforms like this, we have to be patient with each other. My advice to many people is this. Number one, Nigerians must learn how to separate elections and politics from development and governance. When we right now, what you have seen in the settlement of this issue before the Governors Forum is the dust of politics was allowed to settle, reason was allowed to prevail, Valid arguments were allowed to be marshaled, and they arose at it. Now, during an election period, that governors forum meeting would never have held.
It won't hold. You're talking about election.
People will frustrate it, even in 3 months, 4 months after election, before any results come out. So, you see, this is Nigerian lives and livelihoods.
Democracy, governance must be totally separated from governance.
Well, no. You mean policy? No, you
politics.
Not totally separated.
No. What I mean after the election.
After one must lead. Governance and development must lead. Politics must come a far second. As you are approaching elections, you can play and shout and do your politics. But at the end of the day, things have to be done. Waste has to be disposed. Water has to be supplied. Power has to be generated. Policies have to be made. We have to even review past policies.
Now, the governors emphasized the importance of maintaining economic stability and safeguarding the welfare of citizens during the ongoing fiscal reforms.
Yes. Basically, that was alluding to taking every step to ensure that nobody is left
behind
out of the financial inclusion bracket. That's one. It is also to make sure that, look, everyone is made to feel a part of Nigeria.
Belong.
Also, I think it's pointedly directed at anything that will cause or exacerbate the inflationary rates right now will not be welcome, at least without deliberate effort at battling inflation. Nigeria's inflation right now, well, if you go to the streets, they'll tell you 34.8. But we know that the government is struggling with other efforts. It's probably much less than that, to be honest.
Much less or higher?
It is less. And then you have to go to, it's per sector. There are the inflation does not impact certain sectors, certain goods as much as others. The marginal increase in inflation, for example, for agric and foods, for example, yes, will affect a lot of people. So,
which is what is happening.
So, the effort now, look, I've seen, for example, that the government itself is doing quite a number of things. You see, but it'll be good.
Are they taking too many things at the same time?
Not necessarily. It's like driving a 6-horse chariot. When you're multitasking or you're having, all those things are necessary, because skills acquisition, is it not necessary for the youth? If you want to build the youth, you have to talk about skills. If you want to distribute wealth, you can't distribute wealth just by dashing people money. They must have some skills to be able to double that money, engage, and you know. So what I'm saying is that the government is doing a lot of things that are all over the place. I think it's a question of coordinating all those things and then taking a stronger look at the social issues. What are the social networks? What are the social buffers?
All right. Let's get in some more things because time is running. This is on the governor's side. They've agreed, but in his New Year message, Ajero says he demands transparency, inclusivity, and fairness of policy concerning taxation.
Yes.
At the same time, Aso-Yola zone rejects the tax bill because it will reduce funding to TED fund. They're saying that he has to wait, let it expand to 2030. It will cripple tertiary education. I mean, what do you think about this?
Exactly. I think I will deal with tertiary education separately, and I will deal with the others. The third one, I understand the principle that, like I said, there's a transition period between when people get used to the, for now, that's why the statements were made concerning third fund, NITDA, Naseni, all that you should expand it. There could be, those are things that can be fine-tuned. Right now, Nigeria needs accommodation, both from the policy makers and those who are to receive critique or analyze or implement the policy. There is a lot of accommodation that we need right now. And it's not a question of saying that, by all means, continue to bombard the federal government with challenge, with questions, put them under the spot. That is what they are trained for. That is what they got elected for. I'm not saying we should slow down. However, it should be done in a manner that is constructive. And should not obfuscate issues. You do that and keep them on their toes. At the same time, when we see some policies coming out that we too are supposed to leverage on, because policies are not made for the government. Policies are made for the people, because people are part implementers of the policies. And this is what I see. And this is where the partnership between government, between private sector, between civil society, and if you like, you draw in our international partners, although I will still leave them out of the door. We want to get our act together inside Nigeria first. And an international development partner that sees that you have a direction, you can make hard choices, right? And I would say that better to make hard choices early in the day than to wait or pretend. Some of these things, these decisions...
Pay now, gain tomorrow?
Yeah, some of these decisions made today would have been made 4 years ago, 8 years ago, for crying out loud.
Even more than 8 years ago.
Well, maybe we wouldn't. If you don't suffer enough, you don't make the right decisions. You have to...
Why wait to suffer before you
well,
make the right decision?
You shouldn't, ideally, when you're told that, look, this is a good decision. But many people, we believe a lot in our own self-correctness in several ways. And when you are within a situation where there is unhealthy competition, which tends to be the situation in Nigeria, at times we just look at it, we just go, because the man said it's not good, I am doing it, I will continue to do it regardless.
Dr. Adesina Fagbenro-Byron, lawyer, former presidential candidate, COA party in 2019, international development expert. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Being on the program.
Thank you very much.